السلام عليكم مشاهدينا
Peace be upon you all. Welcome to all of you once again to this second session of the 17th Al Jazeera Forum, which is dedicated to the resistance projects and the plans of the occupation and the prospects of internationalization. We welcome our guests here, Dr. Muhsin Saleh, Director General of Al Zaytuna Center for Studies and Consultations. Also, Dr. Hani Al-Masri, Director General of Masarat, the Palestinian Center for Policy Research and Strategic Studies. Also, Dr. Hassan Al-Barari, Professor of International Relations at Qatar University. Also, Dr. Shafiq Shuqair, researcher at Al Jazeera Center for Studies. Welcome to all of you. We are discussing the resistance projects and the plans of the occupation and the prospects for internationalization. Here, many questions are being risen, and we have discussed some issues with Mr. Meshaal regarding the big questions, and he tried to answer. And these are questions still open. What is going on? Is it likely to continue and go on? Are there any chances for the project to succeed with its current format? Is there a possibility and space for resistance where there is a new formation of the world today where the power dominates the law and power is above the law? We start with short remarks with Dr. Muhsin Saleh first. In the name of Allah, the Gracious, the Merciful, welcome. Thank you, Al Jazeera, for giving us this great chance. I start with 5 quick points regarding the resistance. First, our understanding of the path of resistance. There is a behavior that is like a wave. It wasn't confined to the flood of Al-Aqsa, but rather since the occupation of Britain of Palestine. This has taken many waves, up and down, but it never stopped. So the Al-Aqsa flood has come as one of the waves, but there is specific issue, which is every wave comes stronger than the one before. We have seen that in the uprising, which made the Palestinian cause first in the world, then Al-Aqsa uprising in 2005, until the flood of Al-Aqsa, which was the most powerful in the modern history. So they are unstoppable waves, and we shouldn't look to the war as it is over. So briefly said, we now are in between 2 waves, one up and one down, waiting for the next and following wave, and not an end of the war as if everything is over with. Second, the evaluation of Al-Aqsa flood. Some may have different opinions regarding the assessment and the gains and the achievements, and what has the resistance achieved and what has the Israeli side achieved. Here I'm not going to delve into details because of lack of time, but in the strategic evaluation, it is a mistake to speak about the current status and the situation right now, to give a strategic assessment about the resistance experience in general, because the current state could lead to failed assessments and it may not express the general status of the Palestinian cause. Al-Aqsa flood has shaken the security landscape in Israel, and even the presence and the legitimacy of this entity and its image worldwide, and it became a pariah entity. Al-Aqsa flood has changed the international view of the Palestinian cause and made it become priority. So all these issues have caused international paths and directions and trajectories. So the assessment should be strategic in nature, dealing with whole issues. Also, third, resistance was not defeated. It is still there till the last moment of the announcement of the Trump plan. The Israelis admitted that the Gideon first plan failed, and the second Gideon plan, which it did not leave anything in Gaza without destroying it, El Zamir, just one day before the announcement of the Trump plan, has recommended to the leadership in Israel to stop the war and to find a political solution. And reports had it that resistance has replenished their manpower, and now they are 30,000, and there is no horizon to defeat them. So there was a big struggle for our people in Gaza, massacres, killing daily. However, this was not a defeat for the resistance, but at the end of the day, there was an interest for the resistance and the Palestinian people in stopping the war and the massacres. And thus, we should distinguish and say that this issue doesn't mean that the resistance has been defeated, but rather, and according to an Israeli recognition even, that they did not achieve a result or goal. So the Trump plan, when it came, it wasn't merely to stop the slaughtering and the massacres of the Palestinians, because he was a partner. 6 vetoes have been used over 2 years to stop the ceasefire. That was even 12 days before the peace plan of Trump, and tons of arms and weapons have been exported to Israel, and some were equivalent to nuclear bombs. So there was a response by the Palestinians because they had an interest to stop the war and to gain their breath again. Fourth, there is a threat against our Palestinian people and the resistance, no doubt. But this great people and this resistance are heroic, and they were able to come out of the troubles in 1982, and in 1993 they spoke about ending the Palestinian cause. In 1996 they met in Sharm el-Sheikh and discussed ending the resistance. The resistance every time would rise again. Yes, there are real threats, but the Palestinian people and their vital forces are able to go on. They are resilient. Fifth point, the resistance, some try to show it as a liability. Abu al-Walid, Khaled Meshaal, said how it is a qualitative addition to the nation, and the resistance expresses the soul and the honor and dignity of the Palestinians. So resistance is the first bulwark against the Israeli occupation. They protect the strategic environment in the Arab region, and they deter displacement, and it expresses the dignity of the nation. So it is an additional added value and not a liability in any way, shape, or form. So the Trump plan comes about. Everybody discusses on how to deal with it realistically, and there are suitable chances to aid the Palestinian people and to rebuild. However, when the plan came, it came in a way that wouldn't achieve goals, as if it has the seeds of its failure within itself. The Trump plan will be dealt with in different sessions. Okay, but for the resistance here, I don't want to discuss the Trump plan, but for the Israeli in the Trump plan that he is part of the solution, not the problem, and Netanyahu is called to the Board of Peace, and 62 countries are called to be participants in the Board of Peace, yet the Palestinian leadership is not called. This gives an indication that the problem is how will the occupation go on and not how to get rid of the occupation. So the Trump plan was put in order to get rid of the arms of the resistance and not to end the occupation. Also, the plan was established to enable the Israelis to continue with their blackmail politically and militarily and to control the crossings and giving them a pretext and cover to continue with their killing and massacres. So these are seeds of failure are contained within the plan unless there is a serious attempt and plan to give the Palestinians the decision making and to establish their sovereignty on their land and that they decide them for themselves their future.
في مركز الزيتونة للدراسات والاستشارات نلخص سريعا.
So briefly said, resistance wasn't defeated, Dr. Mohsen, and Al-Aqsa flood will not be judged today because it has created paths that would be fruitful probably later on. So this is roughly what Dr. Mohsen Saleh has said. Dr. Hani Al-Masri, I think you have different views regarding these 2 points.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to participate at the Jazeera forum once again. And this is an opportunity to assess this subject. It's not an occasion for campaigning or promotion. It's an attempt to understand the reality and to reach conclusions to help us to overcome it. I believe we agree that we are going through a critical phase, and there is an existential threat to the Palestinian cause and Palestinian institutions. And this is as a result of a genocide that is practiced against the Palestinian people, and the Israeli government planned it before the Palestinian Al-Aqsa flood, and she implemented it after that. And it would have been very difficult for it to carry it out before that. So the Aqsa flood was the response for the occupation crimes, but it paved the way for the Israeli forces to carry out a genocidal war. So the results, despite the resistance, the results were catastrophic in all means. This is the reality as we see it, not only in Gaza, where probably the image there is more expressive for the suffering, but for the West Bank as well. And for all the aspects that were reflected in Trump's plan, which enjoyed an international legitimacy after being passed by the Security Council. We cannot really simply say that this plan was not successful. It was not successful for us because it is an hostile plan for the Palestinians, but it is a successful one for the apartheid state, for Israel. This plan saved it from the international isolation and from the wide international support movement that demanded Israel to be held accountable. And after the Palestinian narrative emerged, and as Netanyahu himself said that this plan has saved Israel. Israel was, despite this plan, was able to continue its war. And people normally sometimes talk as if the war has ended. It didn't end. There is another war going on. More than 600 martyrs were killed, and double this number of people who are injured. Thousands of houses were destructed, and there is an expansion of the yellow zone, and there is no respect for the standards of the release of prisoners, and also restrictions imposed on humanitarian aid. And of course, the formation of the technocrat committee, not by the Palestinians. Palestinians did not form this committee. Out of a 40 name, only 2 names were approved within the committee. The Palestinian president, he demanded for this president he demanded that the symbol for this committee to be similar to the Palestinian Authority, and it was objected by Israel, and Israel has denied this the committee entrance just to prove to anybody that it has the upper hand and it has the complete control. So the committee for us was not successful, and the plan has not been successful, but it was very successful to Israel. So we have to diagnose the reality as in this way so we can go forward. The Palestinian situation or reality now in its worst states, and it is probably it will deteriorate even more if there is no a new Palestinian vision is formalized, if there is no new strategy, if there are no new leaderships that can unify the Palestinian people. There is a genocide that couldn't unify the Palestinian people. Is there anything worse that we can witness in all history? Any people that may face existential threat, all the different divisions will unite, even if they disagree with each within their themselves. This is what happened in all the countries. For us, despite the genocide, we did not only divided, but we came further apart. If we have, of course, there are these unrealistic demands as well, and Hamas also there is talk that if it's express its readiness to provide the security just for it to stay. So this reality pushes us to learn lessons, and we cannot conceal facts. Of course, the war has not finished, and the conflict hasn't ended, because there is a Palestinian people that is continuing in its struggle, wave after wave, revolution after revolution, and it will rise again to defend its lands and its rights. And the resistance is not only an armed one. We should not limit the resistance to an armed resistance. If the armed resistance is stopped, it seems that as if the resistance would stop. We've witnessed times in the Palestinian cause where there was no armed resistance, but there was a bigger resistance when it comes to the first, for example, the first Intifada. It was a peaceful one, and it was not an armed one, and has achieved big results. And so to picture things that this armament is the end of the Palestinian cause, as if the disarmament, we have for us, the main subject for the Palestinian factions and Palestinian powers and Palestinian people is how for the Palestinian people to stay in the land, how to provide conditions for it to stay, and how to also to abort all the attempts to push the Palestinian people out of his land. These are the real challenges, and we are without relying on Trump. And we've heard from factions relying on Trump, and this is a very bad thing. I know very well that we are forced to agree on Trump's plan, but we cannot really rely on him or trust him, especially that he is a partner in this genocidal war, and he provided the Israel with the billions of dollars, and we have to rely on ourselves, on the resilience of our people, on the justice, on the justice and of our cause, and what is more important is the people who sacrificed a lot and who is ready to continue in its struggle in order to achieve its goal, wave after wave. The Palestinian people is like a phoenix that rises from the ashes and rise again in order to achieve its goals, and that will happen after learning the lessons from the mistakes and the shortcomings that the Palestinian leaderships have committed, because we haven't reached to this point only because of the conspiracies and the enemies, but because of the mistakes and the corruption, the division, the mismanagement, and the illusions, wrong illusions, that if we deal with all these problems, we will be able to reach our goal. Thank you, Mr. Al-Masri.
الدراسات الاستراتيجية.
Now we give the floor to Dr. Hassan Al-Barari from the University of Qatar. I wish he would speak about the dimensions for internationalization, because it was said in the past, the tracks show the path. So what we see now, do they show any new custodianship as what we have seen in the British mandate in the past, or there are many impediments that would not necessarily lead to the same result? Thank you, Zain. Your question is so significant. In my assessment, the American attempt to internationalize the Palestinian cause means ending the Palestinian domination over the cause of Palestine, because the Israeli or Zionist project is based on demographic changes, and Trump's version is an Israeli version which was vague. George Orwell said in the past in an article that language is a deception tool. So many terminology items in the American policy gives Israel what they want and mimics the Arabs. They say there is a path, yet there isn't. There is a Palestinian state, yet there isn't. So this internationalization has failed and will fail for two reasons. First, away from who triumphed and who paid the price. This is something that comes, and this is similar to who is seen in Hamas as a reason for a loss in the nation or not. So there is multi views, but there is an issue of 2 points here. First, they broke the iron wall, which was built by the British and supported by the Americans, and we see that always things come back faster against the Zionists' desires and defeat their project. What's happening now with the Gen Z in the US? I was a professor in 2 American universities, and I was teaching the Arab-Israeli conflict. So if you criticize Israel, then you are pursued as anti-Semitic. So the size of protests now is an unprecedented development. So this has come because the Palestinians insisted on resisting the occupation. Second, Palestinians were able also to break the displacement project, the genocidal war, if we read it as so that the Palestinians don't go back to resistance, that's a mistake. But rather, there, as Khaled Meshaal said, there is a collective memory and targeting of all the cultural think tanks in order to wipe out this memory. Remember, any resistance will be deterred in a catastrophic way always. The Zionist project was unable to expel the Palestinians from their land. Palestinians rate to the Jews, we see that 170,000 more Palestinians than the Jews. And even since the Herzl project, we see a demographic dimension. So the Palestinians are succeeding here. Are there any costs? Yes, definitely. But the Palestinians were able to break the iron wall, which Israel started and tried to build, also to undermine the strategic project, which is the displacement. Second, which weakens the Palestinian position, is the Arab order or system. I wonder why some Arab countries don't see in Israel as a threat to their existence. That's why the Arab regime is still weak, vulnerable, fragile, and they don't agree what is the threat against them. Israeli threats, Iranian threats, corruption, whatever. So there is an Arabic system or order that was agreed on three things: the centrality of the Palestinian cause and countries holding on to the Arab order. Now the weight has moved from the Levant to the Gulf. Also, that there isn't an Arab banner such as the Arab League, which in the past was not attractive to us, but at least it had the bare minimum acceptance. Also, internationalization. The United States now, who draws the strategy of the US in the region? It is Israel. They are holding on to the horns of America, both Republicans and Democrats. So betting on the United States to be a guarantor in settling this region and or bringing stability to the region, this is an illusion. So the main players in the region, organizations and states, they should understand that without raising the cap against the US will not change its policies. The United States should be convinced that the sovereignty of the Palestinians' achievement is in its own interest. Otherwise, it is going to continue cooperation with the Israelis.
Dr. Shafiq Shuqair, researcher at the Center of Studies, Jazeera Studies, and I will talk about the behavior of resistance and the dynamics that it creates and the direction of the crisis. We can describe the resistance behavior in two sentences. The first one, the resistance trying to mitigate the losses and repositioning itself, especially inside Gaza and, of course, in the Palestinian cause and, of course, in the Arab region and in the international discourse as well. So the other one is to restore the national meaning of the Palestinian cause, because Palestine is not a state, and these movements trying to replace the concept of a state. When it comes to the first part, we can differentiate between the Hamas's negotiations behavior, and that explains its behavior in three aspects. Of course, it decided what it can compromise. It can compromise, of course, the power or the governors, and it accepted the technocrat council, and what the not negotiable for the movement, Hamas, saying that it doesn't not represent the whole Palestinian people, and that, of course, we talked about. There was the talk about disarmament and the international aspect, and what can itself as a movement can give up inside Gaza, and of course there are certain compromises when it comes to negotiations, as in this region. We, of course, the prisoners of war or the hostages, because the result, it was the best probably of the option. It was a painful compromise. When it comes to the third party, and I believe the third one, which is more important, dangerous. If we talk, how is this military conflict has become legitimate after the Second World War? There was this talk about self-determination, and after 15 years, the concepts of national liberation, and of course, the year of 1982. Armed conflict or armed struggle was mentioned as one of the options available. After that, there were terms emerging, like the concept of non-actor state, non-acting movements, and rebellions. And of course, these concepts were describing many movements. And I will just give an example, like an attempt of to identify between the disarmament of Lebanon and in Gaza. Despite Lebanon is completely different, despite the Lebanon, of course, the context is quite different. And in Lebanon, it was the war delimiting the weapons or the arms to the state. Of course, the decision came through a peace council, which was mentioned, UN resolution 30. And it was this resolution that focused on the disarmament. So this momentum, international momentum that led to the armed struggle, it can now to decrease. So I believe that despite talking about disarmament, it's not as easy that we say, yes, I'm ready to give up or that is arm. It is a complex operation, and it has political and legal aspects. Each terminology, each way that can be used to disarm needs to high precision. Of course, Lebanon, they used the word limiting the arms. Why in Gaza can't be used the same word? And what is, of course, we have the internationalization of this concept, because Israel refuses for the next day to be a Palestinian one, or the following day to be Palestinian. So Trump came up with this suggestion, is not to be completely Palestinian, it's to have an international partnership. And Israel is the third party to this partnership. And Israel accepted this internationalization because it believes that the following day, the next day, for the following day, it will be an Israeli one. And it is preparing itself to be ready for that following day, and to be. So internationalization, when it came, it did not only come to find a solution for the crisis of Gaza, it also came to find the crisis of Gaza at the expense of the party which is the weaker one, considered by the aggressor, of course, the Palestinian side. And there is no guarantees that this concept of internalization will be successful. Now, the resistance has to prepare itself for the day after tomorrow. So it is because it's concerned as Israel for that day. And when the resistance may probably give up on any means available for it, it deprives itself from a tool of self-defense in the future. Also, the other, of course, Gaza used to represent the, or focusing on the Palestinian cause. Of course, Gaza is not only the lifter for this, for the Palestinian cause, and it's not the main domain. The main domain is probably can welcome all the Palestinian people, and this is the major factor. And the second party is the Palestinian narrative. And also, when it comes to resistance, I believe in Gaza or in the West Bank, the main strategy is to prevent conclusion. When you can stop the Israeli side to stop concluding this, and to prevent its allies and partners to establish any system that is based on Israeli achievement or Israeli victory, I believe at that stage you can continue and you can survive, and the resistance can live and continue for another day. Thank you so much.
شقير.
Thank you, Dr. Shukir. And to clarify the difference between the Palestinian and the Lebanese issue, and this reminds us of the self-determination issue, which is after Second World War was looked into. And in the transformation era that we have now, when the United States takes the leadership from the French and the Britain empires, so it was logical that they would support self-determination by the Americans to the Algerians, but this did not apply to the Palestinians up until now. Before opening the Q&A session, we have some questions that have come to us digitally, and then we bring the discussion to the floor later on. We have this video. As supporters of the cause, how can we respond to those who are suspicious of the resistance and its role, in terms of what have they benefited after all this destruction and displacement in Gaza? How the resistance would develop, and can they persist more, especially that they have paid a lot? What are the points of power that the resistance has after they have lost the issue of the bargaining chip of the captives? And what will happen if the enemy comes back and attacks Gaza? So now we open the floor for questions. Go ahead.
السيدة بالرداء الأخضر. سيأتي المايك حالا.
The lady in green.
يعني حتى يأتي الميكروفون لأسئلة الجمهور.
So we summarize what has been discussed now by the panelists. Dr. Hassan al-Barari raises questions. Are things still, like he said, that Israel holds both horns of the United States, meaning the Republicans and the Democrats? Good morning, lawyer Huda Nabilsi, Lebanese. Thank you for this enriching forum. We all have a consensus that the Palestinian cause is not just a mere political issue, but a humanitarian cause, an Arab cause, an honor cause, a people's cause who turned words to actions. So Muhammad Darwish said in a poem that your arm has fallen down, so grab it and go on. For the Trump's plan, we look at this plan to say that God forbid that we trust it or believe in it. So I have a question. Is there an alternative plan that could come up with an Arab blessing so that it can be looked into as a plan instead of Trump's plan, or we are still in an Arab inaction state that we can see clearly? We have another question.
Assalamu alaikum. Taysir Sulaiman.
Tashir Suleiman from Jerusalem. Tashir Suleiman from Jerusalem? Yes. I have comments on what Dr. Hani said. Do you have questions? It is a comment and a question. Part of the discourse is that the problem is that we don't have leadership and there aren't mistakes, and we should stay away from the armed resistance. Why don't we give solutions? We tried to unite the Palestinian leadership through elections, and some rejected those elections, which has brought about a new leadership entity. And the whole world rejected that, even some Palestinians rejected that. Also, when there is an aggression against a country, then we should be united. How can be united when there are those who coordinate with the occupation and those who want to liberate their country? There are always historical mistakes, and we should be peaceful and should be cute in our resistance and wait for the international community to liberate us. But the fact is, if we don't defend ourselves and raise arms, the whole world will not say, why wouldn't you liberate yourselves? So Dr. Hani says the first uprising was peaceful. I took part in the first uprising, and we carried stones and rocks and we were killed. And in the 90s, 21 of us were killed because we said we don't want occupation. But when we carried arms, we reached a point that many of our people believed in the idea. To resist the occupation is the right idea. But why didn't we say to the French in World War II, let your arms down and don't fight? So, in the past, we saw a speech on BBC, and France has ended. Part of the French people who said we want to save people and not destroy the army and the heritage became agents. And those who fled are the ones who became leaders. I say to you, and I lived with Abu Ibrahim Hassan Sinwar for a long time. He wanted to understand how to manage the Israeli mentality. And for the Trump's peace plan, the Israeli media says differently. So when we speak about letting down our arms, and I tell you, no leader in Hamas will say that we will let down the arms. Those are the ones who will liberate us. We have to go back to the platform because those questions need answers. So this was said by the leaders of Fatah and the PLO leadership. Abu Iyad was saying, anyone who tells you let down your arms is a fool. Throw your arms is a fool. So if the Palestinians now are kind and cute and peaceful and don't call for their rights in a way that's provocative to the world, will they actually gain their right? First, I didn't say that I am against armed struggle, and I did not call for ending it. I said that the resistance is not contained to armed resistance. And I add armed struggle because the balance of power is different, and because of the difference in the international environment, this is not the only way to liberation at this time. It was at the time of the launch of the Palestinian Revolution, when the Arab order was supportive of the armed struggle and calling for the liberation of Palestine and rejects normalization. Armed struggle without an Arab and international dimension sometimes is similar to an adventure or a venture, with all due respect to all the sacrifices. It could be used in a secondary parameters, but now maybe the results that we have seen after the 7th of October give us a lesson. Yes, negotiations have reached a dead end, and even worse than that, to division. and deepening the occupation and marginalizing the Palestinian cause and all the other troubles. However, armed struggle as a main path and not looking into the right calculations led to disastrous results. When Trump's path is agreed by all Palestinians, that shows the truth of what I said, with all due respect to your slogans. The reality in Gaza and the West Bank says that we are in a very bad situation and we have existential threats. If we don't understand this reality and put the right policies to face it, then we are headed to what is worse. There is a scenario which is imposing Oslo minus or Trump's plan minus, and this is going forward unless what we change what is within ourselves if we don't realize what's happening. So it's not just approaches with different experimentations. I am the son of the Palestinian Revolution for more than 50 years and the armed struggle, and I started the Vietnam experience. I went to Vietnam myself, not just read books, and I know every experience is unique. Had it not been for the Soviet Union and China, then Vietnam wouldn't have ever been triumphant. And the Arab Revolution, the Algerian Revolution without the Arabs, and Abdel Nasser specifically, they wouldn't have become triumphant. So we should know that there is a biological relationship between Israel and the United States. If we don't understand it, then we will fall in trouble. Israel now is being sold as a liability on the United States. Some promote and say that and sell that, but we are not witnessing that. Really, this is not the case. Israel is never a liability on the US. Yes, there are some indications to that, but to exaggerate this, that leads to committing mistakes. Also, there are two aberrations in the Palestinian movement always: the aberration of realism without a struggle, and then the aberration of thinking too much of imagination without focusing on the reality. So realism and nationalism go hand in hand. The one who doesn't look at the status quo cannot change it, even if they have the most important slogans and revolutionary statements and desires. Wishes do not change. Change in the balance of power comes accumulatively within a long-term vision without compromise. Either we call for everything or accept anything. No, we should accept what we can achieve and not to let go of our long-term achievements.
برهاني
شكرا دكتور هاني المصري. would like to comment of Dr. Mohsen Saleh, and also Dr. said that all the revolutions, all the armed conflict, they don't come from a void, not only by, they must be accompanied by supportive international or regional conditions for these movements to continue and for these people to steadfast to be able to determine its fate. Is this available to say that armed struggle is possible now? Thank you so much. I would like to remind you of something important that happened 10 days ago, just prior to the Al-Aqsa floods, when Netanyahu stood at the United Nations and he pointed into a map where all occupied Palestine, including Gaza and the West Bank, and he considered that as a done deal, and he said that he overcome the concepts of understanding or talking with the Palestinians, and he was about to normalize with the Arab countries peace for peace, and he completely ended the Palestinian cause, and it was a free one when Netanyahu governments at the end of 2022 it entered the plan of conclusion or settlement. It wanted to end the Palestinian cause. When Al-Aqsa flood happened, it changed the calculus. It made the prices hefty, expensive, and also restored the question of existence for Israel, and it turned it into something that can be obliterated. Also the international state, there were changes, shifts, and there are internal economic, military, human shifts. In 6 months, 500,000 they moved, they left Israel. So there are prices were paid. There is no option for the Palestinian cause to be obliterated. The idea of normalization, the easy option, which was sold, and it became a very costly option within this brutal with a system as Israel. We cannot conclude, or we cannot take out judgments from the current moment. Look into the general situation, and when we work into the mega trends, how our things are moving, and what is the strategic location or positions of powers. We have to understand the Israeli situation is not as it's used to, whether it was internationally or regionally. It is a defeated entity, and it suffers from a crisis, internal crises. Of course, it's still trying to restore its strength, but through this sentiments of content by the world. When it comes to Trump's plan, I believe that it is premature to say that it was successful or not. It is not at its beginning. It didn't really start in the correct manner to judge its success. It has its own crisis since the beginning. Imagine, until now, the superpower did not take place. Until now, it was not able to convince one side or one party to disarm the resistance. There is no state, after the failure of the Israelis and the Americans and the attempts to destroy Gaza and to defeat the resistance, to have agents from other countries to defeat the resistance or to take its arms. So it's premature to say or describe the plan as a successful. The crisis inside Israel itself, because Israel is a delaying agent, because it wants to impose its conditions. So there are the parts that can actually make this plan a failure by its inside the plan itself. Of course, we support the Palestinian unity and understanding, but in the Palestinian reality, we have to acknowledge that there are real agents, real parties that can delay this unity. All the Palestinians polls, and with all the suffering of the people, it gives the resistance the popular support. This is the dominant sentiment. When we talk about, of course, the Palestinian Authority, they have to understand the aspirations of the Palestinian people. More than 80% of the people, they ask him to resign. This is the president of the Palestinian Authority. We have to be realistic and balanced as well when we look into things. Thank you so much. Of course, we are running out of time, and Dr. Hassan al-Barari, briefly, I just want you to answer, please, about relying on the United States and the change in the United States. Is it an illusion, or are there real changes in the political system when it comes to the Palestinian cause? Of course, this is not 100% an illusion, but there are shifts that we've witnessed in universities, campuses, and of course certain media. And Tim Carson, for example, who is a prominent figure in the right. But when I talk that the United States, both sides, it's controlled by the Israeli right. I talk about the aid, and the United States is rewarding the aggression, what happened in the Palestinian or to the Palestinian people. I don't believe that there is a word can describe the seriousness of what has happened, and it exceeds the Holocaust. And the United States still is defending Israel, provides Israel with all the defense tools, whether it was the aid with the arms, and of course preventing other parties to take part in favor of Palestine. So there is a whole control by Israel. We know that Wednesday Netanyahu will be meeting Trump, and after meeting Arakchi with Witkoff, and this is very clear that the coordination is going towards that America cannot accept a deal that is not accepted by Israel, and this is a control as well. There is one point that I would really want to talk about, touch base on. I would go back to an interview to Ehud Barak, the former prime minister, with Demi Morris, an Israeli historian, in 2002 or 2003. He said, if I was a Palestinian, I would support and become a Fida'i, or so the form of resistance is determined by the Palestinian people. I support any decision by the Palestinian people, whether it was armed or otherwise. But we have to take into consideration that if it was a normal, ordinary occupation, we would understand that Palestinians need to tone down and their voices and to submit to the conditions. But the nature of the Zionist projects insists on expelling, displacing all the Palestinians. And this is the project which was approved by all the Israeli political spectrum. So the way that the Palestinian is presented, so they insist on expelling, displacing all the Palestinians. So inside the Of course, the Palestinians need to rethink about all these aspects. Of course, our guest talked about the war of Vietnam, and of course, 6-1, there was the sacrifices of the Vietnamese. Dr. Hassan, you talked about, you mentioned Yehud Barak. And in reality, this is a saying that was repeated, that if I was a Palestinian, I would resist. But this is all what we have time for, unfortunately. The next session will be the transformation in the regional landscape, moderated by my colleague Zahar Sha'sha'a. I would like at the end of this session to thank Mohsen Mohammed Saleh, Director General of Zaytuna Center, and Mr. Hani Masri, Director General of Masarat. And we'd like to thank Hassan Al-Barari, Professor of International Relations at Qatar University, and our colleague Shafiq Shuqair, researcher at Al-Jazeera Center for Studies. And we have a short break for 10 minutes and to resume the following session. Thank you.